Welcome to block 5 of the Strength and Power unit of your athletic development program. I'm going to talk you through the 6 exercises in this phase that we'd like you to complete. Each exercise has a strength focus, bar the last 2 exercises, which are your jumping and landing. It's the same setup as before. We go 2 exercises superset, then the next 2 superset, and the last 2 superset. So the first exercise will be fairly familiar to you. It's a loaded squat, so we're in this sort of a strength phase now. And we're going to show you again just how you may load the squat if you don't have the luxury of having weights at home. So bodyweight squat is the first one, and how we're going to sort of manipulate it so we get a bit of a strength adaptation to it. Again, remind us that a little bit of load would be beneficial here, but if not, we're going to do tempo. So tempo is the speed at which we do something. So you're going to squat low, like 4-second count, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then come up in a 1-second tempo. Okay, so you're going to do a couple of reps of them. Now you can do this with the box if you want that security of sitting back into it, but if you're comfortable, and Sandra is quite comfortable, if you take a step forward, sitting back into it in that 4-second motion again, 4 seconds and 1 second up. Okay, now if you do have weights, the first one is a goblet squat. So select a weight at home. Again, if you've been doing this last week and you feel comfortable and you're not getting so much DOMs anymore, then feel free to increase the weights slightly. But again, just be sensible with the increases at home. So feet a bit wider than hip width apart. You can slightly turn the toes out to 10 and 2. Again, sitting back into the position. Use a box if you need that security. Weight is really close to the center of mass, so really close to the chest pretty much, so it's not out in front. Squatting down. Again, now the tempo can change because we have a little bit of weight. So again, I want you to control it down. So 1, 2, 3 down is enough, and then back up. If it's between 2 and 3, that's okay, but again, not dropping down again too quickly. Again, use the box, if you have a box or need a box. If you feel comfortable without a box, that's preferable. So if you can keep good technique, like we have here, then go without the box and just use your own stability and your own force generation to kind of get yourself out of the movement, as opposed to using the box. The last one then is our front squat. So obviously these are the same exercises depending on which one you go to, but just go through the whole routine of the options here. So the front squat, again, just keeping 2 dumbbells relatively close to the shoulder blades, the shoulders, up on top of the shoulders, and you can keep the elbows up slightly as well so they're not hanging down because the weight will start to drop down to the floor. Keep the elbows up slightly and the weight against the shoulders. Squatting down, again, using the bench if you need it. Again, if you feel comfortable without the bench and you feel advanced on this, then take a step forward. Just make sure the mechanics are there, the weight transfers back to the heels, your chest is up, you're looking forward. Again, with the breathing here, we're keeping our breath held on the way down, exhaling on the way up. Yeah, so you're using that bracing kind of strategy on the way down, exhaling on the way up to generate the force. 1, 2, 3 perhaps down, and 1 quickly up. Okay. We're going to superset, as I mentioned at the start. So the first one is this. Now we're going into a split squat position. So you need dumbbells. If you don't have dumbbells, again, the tempo is a strategy, but we won't go through that again. I think you know at home what I mean. So facing the camera, so get into a good position. So it's important here, the positions. If you stand too narrow and you take a step, you're going to demand too much of your stability, so you're not going to get the desired effect. So nice and wide, so keeps the good base support. Step back behind yourself, and then with the dumbbells in your hand, you're dropping your back knee towards the floor. Nice controlled movement, and then come all the way up. Good. So 8 repetitions. It's important that back knee drops to the floor. And it is also, I'm just going to go from the side just to show you. So as Sandra's doing the movement, so there's a little bit of movement of the knee, there's a little bit of dorsiflexion of the ankles. Too often I think, there's been false claims to do this, which puts a bit too much demand for me on the knee. It doesn't allow that coupling to happen. So a little bit of flexion, a little bit of dorsiflexion of the ankle is what we're looking for. So 8 repetitions on each side. Again, we're on a strength block. So 8 repetitions is about right. So trying to look forward a little bit. So what we don't want, so maybe pick a point in front of you and observe it as you go down. We don't want, another common mistake sometimes is that front foot the heel starts to come off the floor. Then we know we're kind of a bit imbalanced in terms of where the forces are going through the body. So try and keep the foot or the front foot in contact with the floor. Okay, so 8 repetitions of that. So there are your 2 bilateral and split stance. Now we're going into a posterior chain, which again I've mentioned before is just behind the legs, the hamstrings and the glutes. Okay, so the first one is a sort of a revisit of an exercise we've done maybe a few weeks ago, is our T-walks, but this time we can load it up now if we feel confident. So show you T-walk, just body weight first. see how we get in. So the T walk is basically just getting your body into a T position. So you go back and your body remains in a T. So nice long arms out to the side, good contraction through here, and she's getting into, there's a soft bend in the knee, soft bend, and you can see just a little bit of rotation of the hip. We're trying to keep that straight, the hip focus, and yeah, and come back to standing. So the trick here is just to keep the toe, you can see this rubber of my toe, I want to keep that pointing forward, I don't want to rotate it, I want to keep it pointed forward as I go back. So if you can get into good technique, you can see the toe slightly, she's corrected it, perfect. Yeah, it's a big correction as you go through, and if you're quite confident on that, we'll just load it up here for the purpose of the videos. You can do a light load. Again, you don't need a heavy load. Remember, the load that we're lifting here is far more than the load that's going to be in your arm, because if you think of all the levers that's going on, you're going to have the weight out relatively in front of the center mass, which is going to create more forces to overcome. So you do one hand, yeah, opposite. So yeah, so that's perfect. Yeah, so the back leg goes so out in front and just across your body. So keep this relatively close, going back towards your shin. Yeah, and then back. There we go. And then up. Yeah, perfect. That's it. Good, so that's decent technique here, but remember it's we have a light kg here, but it's not so much the kg that you're lifting, it's all the fulcrum, it's all the levers, everything that's happening here is going to demand how much force the body has to overcome to lift the 5 kg. It's not the 5 kg you're lifting, it's a lot more force than maybe meets the eye. So just make sure that you're being sensible in your approach, because if loaded with too much dysfunction, it's not going to be beneficial in the long run. So if you're happy with body weight, stick with body weight. If you feel you need a bit more stimulus, then add some light weight. Okay, now onto a lunge, a predominant lunge, a normal lunge. People would often say it's more of a hip flexor, sort of quad dominant exercise. But actually, if you manipulate some of the variables, you can get a bit of a different stimulus to the muscle, to different muscles. So this is like a hamstring lunge. And how we set up here is a normal lunge, so feet nice and wide. You're going to take half a step forward, right? Half a step forward. We're going to squat. Then from here, we're going to drop their back knee, and then we're going to reach forward into the floor. And this is more of a hamstring movement. So it's come back up again. So imagine you're getting into a split squat position. You're getting forward, and you're reaching here, and then come up. So a little step forward, drop the back knee, and reach up. So quite a difficult exercise to do, but if done right, we can get a real good stimulus through our hamstrings, because we got the pelvis going through the rotation, which loads up the glute and pulls on the hamstrings, and then we got that knee flexing forward, which also loads the hamstrings. So you're loading up the hamstrings on the distal and the proximal end as you're going through range. Add load. You can see here we're obviously not using any weight, but if you want to add a bit of load to this movement, feel free to do so, as long as the technique is there. Yeah, that's good. And just make sure at home you feel this in the hamstrings. If you're not feeling this in the hamstrings, then you might have to adjust and put the weight away and try and get into that position where you feel you're just stepping forward, feet on the floor, the back foot is slightly off the floor, or the heel is off the floor. I'm coming forward and I'm reaching, and I can feel that in my hamstrings because of my hip rotating forward, so it has to be working your hamstrings in that position. Yeah, and then come out of it. Again, 8 repetitions on your left, 8 repetitions on the right. Superset those, so your T-walks and your lunges. And then we're going into our jumping and landing techniques. Okay, so the first one's the pogo hops, but the pogo hops now challenge them on the transverse plane, rotational plane. We've done a lot forward, back, laterally. So we're going to go, so imagine there's a bit of a line here in the surface that we're on. So we're going to go jump behind our line and then back to center again. So in the same pogo hop. So a little pogo hop and back and forward. So technique here is quite good, but if you're struggling with the complexity of all the movement here, we'll just slow it down into one part. So we're going to go a pogo hop into rotation, back to center, and relax there. And then go to the other side, and then come back. And if you feel like you're getting good at these, and when I say good at these, the mechanics are good. So the toes up when I land, minimizing contact on the floor, and I'm getting some good height is what I'm looking for. Not so much just doing the exercise. And if you feel like they're good, then load it up by doing 1 or 2 jumps in a row, 3, 4 jumps in a row. You're going to do 8 on your left, 8 on your right in total. So adjust how you feel you're doing. Again, you should have that nice plantar flex foot, dorsiflex foot. You're not going to be too forward, so if I'm landing with my foot like this, it takes a while for my foot to get into nice position to drive force into the floor. So make sure your feet are, your toes are up as you land. Again, getting height and minimizing the contact on the floor. The one to superset this with is the jump lunges. So it's important here that we get into a nice good position so our feet are not too narrow. So now if we go jumping and we're adding force, mass and momentum into it, it's important that we don't narrow up our stance. So keep our stance here, dropping down, jumping up and swapping the legs. Now, the hands here are important, how they contribute to the movement. So as I'm coming down and as the quad is sort of lengthening as I'm going through it, my hands should be going down. And as the quad is contracting, coming up, my hands should be coming up with me. So my hands should be contributing to the downward force and to the upward force. So they shouldn't be conflicting each other. So it's down, and when I'm coming up, I'm up and then down, and then I'm coming up with the movement. So make sure the hands are in sequence to what you're trying to achieve out of the movement. That's your 6 exercises for this block. It's a bit more challenging on some of the exercises. Load them where possible, but it's not all about the load necessarily. Just trying to add a little bit of stimulus with tempo or load if you have it, and you feel like the competence is there, then by all means to add a little bit of load to it, and you should feel strength is starting to develop, along with stability and mobility will help you get into the right positions that we're looking for in these exercises. I hope you enjoy it. Continue your training. We're getting ever so close to returning back to your sport, so ensure that you're doing all the right things, that when you go back that you're fully prepared to have a nice long season of playing. See you again soon.